My name is Celeste Ainsley. I'm a caregiver at a senior living center, and I've never believed that love had to be dressed in silk or served on silver platters to be real. When my fiancé and I decided to hold our wedding in the nursing home where my grandmother lives, we didn't expect applause. But we also didn't expect to be mocked by my own mother and sister. They rolled their eyes, whispered behind my back, and called it a despair wedding. They thought it was beneath them, beneath our family name. But they came anyway, just in time to see the moment that changed everything. The moment someone recorded a piece of that day, and the internet made up its mind. Suddenly, the laughter turned to silence. Their judgment turned into panic, and they begged me, literally begged me, to take it down. But by then, it was no longer just a video. It had become the truth they couldn't hide from. Graham proposed to me on the rooftop of his firehouse, right after his shift ended. There were no candles, no violinists, no grand gestures, just the two of us and the early morning sun breaking over Boston. I said yes before he could even finish asking. A few weeks later, my mother Vivian invited me to brunch at a sleek French bistro downtown. As expected, my sister Cambria was already seated, tapping away on her phone with a latte untouched in front of her. Vivian cut straight to it. I've already spoken to the coordinator at Blanchard Estate. It's the most sought-after venue this season. I've tentatively booked it under your name, just in case. I blinked. You did what? It's a favor. You'll thank me later. She smiled tightly. Cambria finally looked up and added, Blanchard's aesthetic is clean and expensive. Perfect for my feed. I let out a slow breath. Mom, we haven't decided on a venue yet. Vivian waved her hand. There's nothing to decide. This is your wedding. It needs to reflect a certain standard. Our standard. By the time the conversation ended, my head was spinning. I couldn't get a word in without being trampled by their vision of what my wedding was supposed to look like. That evening, as Graham and I sat on our worn-in couch sharing takeout, I finally said it out loud. I want to have the wedding at Havenbrook. Graham looked up. You mean at the nursing home? I nodded. Grandma Eleanor can't travel anymore. Her health's been declining. If we wait for a perfect venue, she might not be able to come at all. He didn't hesitate. Then we're doing it at Havenbrook. That was the moment everything changed. It was a quiet choice, one made out of love. But it would send waves through our family, ripples strong enough to fracture us, and eventually, to reveal who we truly were. We told them at Sunday brunch, the kind of family meal where smiles are staged and truths are dressed in pearls. I'm sorry, I said, my voice clear but calm. But we've decided. We're having the wedding at Havenbrook, where Grandma Eleanor lives. Vivian set her mimosa down a little too hard. You're not serious. Cambria looked up, blinking like she misheard. At a nursing home? That's not even ironic cute. It's just tragic. I could already feel the tightness building in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. We want Grandma to be there. That matters more than a trending location. Vivian leaned in, lowering her voice like she was discussing a family scandal. Do you have any idea how that will reflect on us? On me? I've already sent feelers out to colleagues. There were expectations. Then you'll have to adjust them, I said. This is our wedding. Cambria scoffed. Do you realize how this will look online? I can't post anything from a place that smells like bleach and canned peas. You don't have to post anything, Graham cut in, calm but firm. This wedding isn't for followers, it's for family. Neither of them responded. We finished the meal in silence, tension clinging to the air like static. Later that week, I visited Havenbrook to speak with the director. Martha, a kind woman with smile lines deepened by years of warmth, lit up when I told her what we wanted. A wedding here? She said. That's a beautiful idea. We've had a few over the years. It means so much to the residents. Especially one, I said quietly. Martha nodded, then hesitated. I do need to mention something. Have you spoken with Dr. Reyes about your grandmother's condition? I froze. Not in detail. Why? There's been a recent update. He should tell you himself, but it's serious. I swallowed hard. the room suddenly colder. That night, I sat by Eleanor's bed as she played a few soft notes on her old piano. I told her everything: our plan, the resistance, the hope. She touched my cheek. You always had your priorities straight. I wanted to believe that. But in that moment, all I could feel was the weight of the decision and the storm it was about to bring. The morning of our wedding at Havenbrook began quietly. The sun rose slowly, casting golden light over the courtyard. The wisteria vines swayed gently above the pergola, and residents peeked through their windows with anticipation. Nurses bustled around with purpose, but there was a calm, reverent energy in the air, like the day itself knew it was sacred. Inside one of the guest rooms, I stood before the mirror in my grandmother's wedding dress. It was ivory lace and satin, slightly yellowed by time, with delicate pearl buttons down the back. It didn't sparkle, but it glowed in its own way. It held stories, generations. "You look like you stepped out of a novel," Lana whispered behind me, adjusting the hem. "She says I'm her exact size at 24. I smiled. "That might be a stretch." There was a knock at the door. Jason's mother peeked in. "Celeste, my goodness. Do I look ridiculous?" She placed her hand to her chest. "You look like someone who knows exactly who she is. Are they here?" She nodded. "Vivian and Cambria just arrived. They're dressed well." Code 4, out of place. When I walked into the main lounge, I gasped. The space had been transformed. Soft oranda fabric floated from the ceiling, wildflowers filled handmade vases, and sunlight poured through the windows. Jason's fellow firefighters lined the aisle in their dress uniforms. Residents sat with corsages and pocket squares, smiling as though it were their own granddaughter getting married. And there, front row, center, sat Grandma Eleanor in a sky-blue dress, her hair styled, her eyes alive with joy. She waved gently. I swallowed a wave of emotion. Jason's father took my arm. "From this day forward, you're our daughter too." As we walked down the aisle, I caught sight of Vivian and Cambria. Both were stone-faced, seated stiffly in luxury labels. They didn't belong, not because they weren't family, but because they hadn't chosen to be present in spirit. The ceremony was simple and sacred. The chaplain from Havenbrook spoke of legacy and love that transcends appearance. Jason's vows made several guests tear up. "You see people for who they are, not what they show. That's why I knew I wanted to marry you." We exchanged rings. We kissed. The room burst into applause. During the photo session, a staff member called for the Hartwell family to gather. Jason, Eleanor, and I took our places. Vivian and Cambria hesitated before joining, standing slightly apart. As the photographer raised his camera, I heard Vivian mutter, "This is humiliating." Cambria added under her breath, "My followers would roast me alive if I posted this." I tightened my grip on Jason's hand, but said nothing. I didn't need to. Then Eleanor slowly rose from her chair and took my hand. "I'm so happy I lived to see this," she said softly, but loud enough that everyone nearby could hear. There was a pause, then a few sniffles, then tears. Not just from me. Even some of the staff cried. One of Jason's friends, Mike, had filmed the moment on his phone. He turned to me, moved. "That was beautiful. May I post it?" I looked at Eleanor. She smiled at me through glassy eyes. "Yes," I whispered. "Let them see what love really looks like." And in that moment, I wasn't just a bride. I was a granddaughter, a woman who had chosen presence over perfection, and the world was about to witness it. The morning after our wedding, sunlight poured into the apartment like a gentle exhale. Jason lay beside me, one arm draped over the blankets, the ring on his finger catching the light. For a few minutes, everything was still. Peaceful. Then my phone buzzed, and buzzed again, and again. I reached for it with one hand, still half asleep, and stared at the flood of notifications. 23 unread messages, several missed calls, and a barrage of alerts from every app I had. The first message was from Lana. "Celeste, check YouTube. It's gone viral, like, viral. Confused, I opened the link she'd sent. It led to Mike's video, the one he'd taken during our ceremony. The thumbnail was a still frame of me hugging Grandma Eleanor in her blue dress, both of us with tears in our eyes. Title: The Most Beautiful Wedding I've Ever Seen, held in a nursing home for love. Views: 412,000 and climbing. I tapped play. The video started with the family photo. Cambria's voice cut through the soft music like a knife. If I post this, people will think it's a charity case. Vivian followed, her voice tight. This is beyond embarrassing. Then it shifted. The camera zoomed in as Eleanor took my hand and whispered, "I'm so happy I lived to see this." The silence in the footage, right after she spoke, felt sacred. The comments section was a flood of emotion. This is the definition of grace. Shame on the mother and sister. You can see the love from the grandmother. This made me sob. The bride chose what mattered: respect. Who needs chandeliers when you have a heart like that? Scrolling further, I realized the story had been picked up by 2 local news outlets. One had posted a follow-up, "A love that shamed vanity, a family's unexpected viral moment." Jason walked in rubbing his eyes, his t-shirt wrinkled. "You okay?" "Our wedding," I said slowly. "It went viral overnight." He leaned over to look. "Huh? Well, I guess that means people liked it." Before I could reply, my phone rang again. "Mom." I took a deep breath before answering. "Good morning." Vivian didn't bother with pleasantries. "Have that video taken down, now." "What?" "My clients are calling nonstop. I've lost 2 contracts already. People are sending me hate mail." "I didn't post the video, Mom." "Well, get the person who did to remove it. Catherine is in tears. She says sponsors are pulling out of collaborations." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean Cambria?" "She's your sister, and she's devastated." "I didn't tell her to call my wedding pathetic. Or to laugh at Grandma. That's all in the video, unedited." "Celeste," she snapped. "I don't care what was said. Just fix this. Our family looks like trash." Jason appeared behind me and raised an eyebrow. I turned on speakerphone. "I'm not taking it down," I said calmly. "It's not mine to remove, and even if it were, it's the truth." Yut Grandma had already protected something far more important: my future, my truth, and the kind of love that doesn't need approval to be valid. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Jason opened it. Vivian and Cambria stood there, disheveled, unpolished, nothing like their usual curated selves. Cambria's mascara was smeared, eyes red. Vivian's hands trembled as she stepped into the living room. "You have to stop this," Cambria begged. "My brand's collapsing. I've lost 3 deals since breakfast. Please, just take the video down." "I can't," I said softly. "It's out there. People saw what you said, what you meant." "It wasn't supposed to be public," Cambria cried. "It wasn't supposed to be said," Jason replied. His voice was calm, but firm. "That was your choice. Now the world sees it." And then, another call, unknown number. I answered, my voice dry. "Mrs. Celeste West?" a deep voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Jonathan Quinn. I'm the attorney for Eleanor Byrne. She contacted me last night, right after your ceremony. She insisted on making changes to her will." I froze. "Her will?" "She passed peacefully in her sleep early this morning, but she made sure the changes were official. I'd prefer to go over the full details in person, but I can say this now. You, Celeste, have been named as the primary heir to her estate." The room fell silent. Vivian stumbled back into the armchair. Cambria stared at me as if she'd seen a ghost. Jason stepped forward, standing beside me. "And the rest of her estate?" I asked, my throat tightening. "She established a foundation, a fund for special moments, weddings, family events, held inside elder care facilities. You've been named as its executive director." I couldn't speak. "I'm heading to Havenbrook this afternoon," Mr. Quinn added. "If you're available, I'll explain everything." I looked around the room. My mother's face had gone pale. Cambria was shaking. They had come here to protect their image. The ride to Havenbrook was silent. Jason drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting gently over mine. In the back seat, my mother and sister sat stiffly, their designer coats folded tightly over their laps. No one spoke. No one dared. When we arrived, Dr. Reyes was already waiting in the front lobby. His face was calm, but his eyes held a quiet heaviness. "She passed peacefully in her sleep early this morning," he said gently. The words didn't register at first. They just hovered in the air like fog. I breathed. "She was fine yesterday." "She was holding on," he said. "For you, for the wedding." Jason put his arm around me as my knees weakened. I didn't cry, not yet, not until later. For now, I only nodded. "She left something for you?" the doctor added, handing me a sealed envelope. My name was written in Eleanor's elegant script. We were led to a quiet conference room where Mr. Quinn was already seated with a thick folder. "Before I begin, I want to say your grandmother was extraordinarily organized," he said. "She left nothing to chance." He explained everything with care. Eleanor had held patents from her years as a music educator, innovations in teaching tools, published works, royalties. She had also invested wisely, building a fortune quietly, far from public eye. "She changed her will last night," Mr. Quinn said. "Half her estate will establish the Eleanor Byrne Memorial Fund to support weddings and special life events inside senior care facilities. You, Celeste, have been appointed as its steward." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "The remainder of her estate, over $2 million, has been left to you." Across the table, Vivienne gasped softly. Cambria's mouth fell open. "There are also conditional inheritances," he added. "Your mother and sister will receive symbolic amounts, with stipulations tied to personal growth and charitable work. Your grandmother hoped they would see value differently over time." I sat motionless. Jason reached for my hand. Then I opened the envelope. "My dearest Celeste, you were always the one who looked with your heart, not your eyes. There's something you don't know. When you were a baby, your mother, overwhelmed and struggling, considered putting you up for adoption. I couldn't let that happen. I stepped in, and from that day forward, you were mine as much as hers. I never told you because I didn't want you to feel less loved, but you were the brightest part of my life. I hid my finances for a reason. I've seen what money does to people, but I always knew. If anyone deserved it, it was you. Thank you for choosing to get married in a place that mattered. Thank you for giving me the chance to see it. If possible, forgive your mother and sister. They are not evil, just misled. But you, my darling, are proof that grace survives anything. With all my love, Grandma." I read the last line through tears. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a promise. 3 months later, spring returned to Havenbrook. The courtyard was in bloom again, wisteria twisting through the pergola, wildflowers swaying in soft gusts of wind. A new wooden bench had been placed beneath the cherry tree Eleanor loved, with a small bronze plaque that read, "I'm so happy I lived to see this." Eleanor Byrne. The Eleanor Byrne Memorial Foundation had just held its first official event. A young couple exchanged vows in the garden, surrounded by residents, staff, and family. There were tears, laughter, stories, just as there had been at our wedding. I stood off to the side, watching it all with a quiet pride Eleanor would have recognized. My mother was there, helping to coordinate seating. She no longer sold real estate. She resigned shortly after the news coverage died down, saying only that she needed to reevaluate what home truly means. She now worked part-time as a community liaison for the foundation. Cambria had rebranded her social media presence entirely. Gone were the luxury hauls and brand drops. Instead, she posted about family dinners, her therapy sessions, and interviews with residents of long-term care centers. She called it Real Faces, Real Love. Her follower count dropped, but the comments were kinder than ever. And me? I still worked as a caregiver. I still lived in the same apartment with the same man who stood by me when everything spun sideways. The money changed some things. Of course it did. But it didn't change us. Grief has strange timing. Sometimes it hits in waves, sometimes in stillness. Today, it arrived as I sat on that bench, the same lace wedding dress now preserved in a garment bag in my closet. Jason joined me. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. I reached into my bag and pulled out Eleanor's letter, the edges already soft from too many readings. "I hope we're making her proud," I whispered. Jason took my hand. You are, every day. I smiled, watching the petals drift down from the tree above us. Some people chase legacy through gold and applause. Eleanor left hers in quiet love, and the lives it continues to touch. My grandfather used to say, true success doesn't need a spotlight. It needs patience. I didn't fully understand what he meant until the night I was called a poor waitress at a luxury gala. Right before the room fell silent, and my sister's boss realized who I really was. My name is Rosalie, and for most of my life, I let others define me by what they saw. An apron, a bakery, a life that looked small from the outside. My sister, Clarissa, made sure of that. To her, I was always the less impressive sibling, someone who never quite fit into the polished image she projected. I kept my world quiet, and my success even quieter. But that night, something shifted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't seek revenge. I just let the truth walk into the room, and when it did, everything they believed about me shattered. If you've ever been underestimated, written off, or pushed to the shadows by your own family, then stay with me. Because this isn't just a story about power. It's about dignity, and what happens when the woman they dismissed ends up owning the very company they built their pride on. I grew up above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and survival. My mother ran the place, a modest corner shop in a working-class part of New Jersey, where neighbors knew each other's kids, and rent checks sometimes waited on grace. My earliest memories aren't of cartoons or playgrounds. They're of counting coins, folding pink cake boxes, and waking before dawn to beat the first rush of morning regulars. I didn't hate it. In fact, I learned more behind that glass pastry counter than most kids learned in classrooms. I learned rhythm, grit, and how to look people in the eye, especially when they tried not to look at you. By the time I was 15, I was managing inventory. At 17, I was reading business books between frosting cupcakes. My real education came after hours, when I'd hole up in the back office with my mother's old laptop, studying supply chain models and learning how microloans worked. It didn't feel ambitious back then. It felt necessary. Our margins were thin. The work was endless. And I wanted more than survival. I wanted something scalable. Clarissa, on the other hand, always hated the smell of flour. She wore gloves to help out in the kitchen, and even then, only when cameras were around. Where I saw possibility in our family's hustle, she saw embarrassment. She escaped the moment she could, enrolling in a top-tier business school and disappearing into a world of sharp suits and rooftop brunches. And to be fair, she climbed fast. Clarissa was always polished, always poised, always someone's favorite success story at dinner parties. The daughter who made it out. Meanwhile, I stayed behind. Not because I lacked ambition, but because I was building something of my own. At 23, I launched Nuvia Capital, a fintech startup focused on bridging lending gaps for immigrants and small business owners, people like my mom. I didn't take funding from the usual venture capitalists. I bootstrapped, reinvested profits, and partnered quietly with credit unions and community organizations. It was never flashy. It was never loud. But it worked. By 28, we'd gone national. But I still helped at the bakery some weekends. Not for the money, for the grounding. It reminded me who I was. Clarissa didn't see it that way. To her, I was wasting potential. She once told me flat out, "You're brilliant, Ro, but you'll never be taken seriously if you keep smelling like buttercream and spreadsheets." I smiled, said nothing. What she didn't know was that one of our biggest licensing clients had just signed a multi-million-dollar agreement. A client she worked for. It was easier that way, being underestimated. People revealed their real selves when they thought you were beneath them, and I was content to let Clarissa play her game. At least I was. Until she decided to drag me into it. Clarissa had no idea that the startup I tinkered with, on the side, had grown into a quiet empire. I never posted about Nuvia Capital on social media. No launch parties, no flashy press releases. Just milestones stacked like bricks. Private contracts, licensing deals, scalable analytics, and solid revenue streams. Our software helped small businesses run smarter and access credit faster. In the eyes of banks and data firms, we were essential. In the eyes of my family, I was still just Rosalie from the bakery. That used to bother me. Now it amused me. I remember one Sunday dinner where Clarissa clinked her wineglass and, with a sigh that could cut granite, asked me how my little cupcake app was going. She said it loud enough for the table to hear, but with that faux polite tone that made it sound like she was being supportive. I told her it was doing well. What I didn't tell her was that her firm, Valine and Cross, had been using our back-end analytics for nearly 8 months. My team had onboarded them under a white label contract. She had no clue. "Don't get me wrong," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Baking is a noble trade. And the tech stuff you do, it's cute, but it's not real scale, Ro. It's not leadership." I looked at her, wondering if she'd still say that if she knew I held voting shares that could block her next campaign proposal. I doubted it. Still, I let her have her moment. She needed it more than I did. You see, Clarissa's pride was made of glass, perfectly polished, but one crack away from ruin. And every time she put me down in front of our parents, I could see her desperation. She needed to believe she'd risen above me, that I was still the girl behind the pastry case, grateful for crumbs. But I'd stopped playing that part long ago. The truth is, I never wanted Clarissa's world. I didn't need business cards embossed in gold, or to be called senior director at cocktail parties. I wanted impact. I wanted autonomy. And I had both. I spent my weekdays finalizing a merger that would change the future of community financing, and my weekends elbow-deep in bakery receipts, helping my mom transition to digital ordering. I wore yoga pants to board meetings and flats to financial briefings. And I answered to no one. That's the thing about building quietly. People assume you're standing still until you move. And by the time they notice, it's too late to catch up. The week before everything changed, I got a call from our legal counsel. The final stage of negotiations was near. If all went smoothly, Nuvia Capital would acquire a controlling interest in Valine and Cross. Yes, Clarissa's prestigious firm. The irony was almost poetic. I could have told her. I could have sent her a gift-wrapped NDA just to watch her jaw drop. But I didn't. I waited. Because sometimes silence is sharper than confrontation. And because I knew what was coming next. The invitation that would set everything in motion. "Ro," Clarissa said one evening as we cleared dishes at our parents' house, "I have a favor to ask. I'm hosting a formal gala next month. It's for my promotion. Big deal. Lots of partners. Would you help coordinate the food? I know you're good with event stuff." She didn't mean it as a compliment. Before I could answer, Mom clapped her hands. "That's perfect. Ro's amazing with logistics. It'll be flawless." Clarissa gave me a look that said, "Stay in your place." And I gave her one that said, "Gladly." "Sure," I said. "I'd be happy to help." I walked out of that dinner carrying 2 things, a casserole dish and the weight of my sister's condescension. Clarissa had no clue she'd just handed me the stage. She thought she was putting me in my place, assigning me to the background like always, near the trays and tablecloths, not the podiums or power. But I had no intention of correcting her, not yet. That night, as I rinsed dishes at my mother's sink, my phone buzzed with a name that made me pause. James Vance, CEO of Valine and Cross, Clarissa's boss. "Rosalie," the email read, "I've been informed you're the founder of Nuvia Capital. Would love to meet. I'll be attending our internal celebration next month. If you'll be there, perhaps we can connect in person." It took me a minute to process the delicious symmetry. Clarissa had unknowingly invited me to cater the same event where her boss hoped to meet the woman about to take over his company. I stared at the glowing screen, then at my reflection in the microwave door. My hair was tied up, my sweatshirt stained with flour, and there I was, being addressed not as someone's sister, but as someone of consequence. I didn't respond to the email right away. I didn't need to. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water, leaned back against the counter, and let the stillness settle in. The kind of stillness that comes right before the curtain rises. Over the next few weeks, Clarissa peppered me with passive-aggressive texts about catering vendors, menu options, and delivery times. "Make sure the hors d'oeuvres are upscale," she wrote. "Last thing I need is anything that feels too homemade. Too homemade, like our childhood, like me." I kept my replies short, professional. "Noted." Confirmed. All set. Meanwhile, I worked with my CFO and legal team to finalize the acquisition. Quietly, thoroughly, with precision. And with every document signed, every clause secured, the vision sharpened. This wouldn't just be a merger. It would be a reckoning. 2 nights before the event, Ryan, my longtime partner, noticed the tension in my shoulders as I laid out my black dress. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked, watching me from the doorway. "You don't have to play along just to prove something." "I'm not proving anything," I said, smoothing the fabric between my fingers. "I'm just showing up." Ryan sighed. "She doesn't deserve this level of grace, Ro." "No," I said quietly, "but I do. I deserve to walk into that room without shame, without needing to explain or justify anything. I'm not doing this to humiliate her." I looked up at him then. "I'm doing it so she never confuses silence with weakness again." He didn't have a response. The night before the gala, I sent one final message to Clarissa. "All vendors confirmed. Timing in place. I'll be on site at 4 p.m. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I smiled. The last piece had clicked into place. All I had to do now was serve. The Whitmore estate shimmered under lights like a dream Clarissa had choreographed. Crystal glasses, a string quartet, ice sculptures that would melt before dessert. And me, exactly where she wanted me, in the kitchen. Clarissa had tasked me with overseeing the catering crew. Her voice, sharp and sweet, had reminded me to stay behind the scenes. I nodded. Of course. As I walked through the party with a tray in hand, I heard my name float out from her lips like perfume meant to stain. "That's my sister, Rosalie," she told a group of executives. "She's helping out. Always loved the hospitality stuff. Poor thing." Soft chuckles followed. My mother added her usual line. "We try to include her, of course. She chose her path." No one noticed the text I received just then. "Deal closed. 51%. Effective immediately." James Vance arrived shortly after. Clarissa rushed over, all grace and charm. "Mr. Vance! We're honored." He nodded, scanned the room, then saw me. His brow furrowed. "Oh, don't worry about her," Clarissa said. "That's my sister, just helping the staff." "Wait," James said, stepping forward. "That's Rosalie?" I handed off my tray and smiled. "Hello, James. I'm glad you made it." He laughed, eyes widening. "Serving drinks at your own party? I suppose this is how you keep people humble." Clarissa blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Miss Rosalie is the CEO of Nuvia Capital," James said smoothly. "And as of 15 minutes ago, she owns controlling interest in Valine and Cross." The room froze. Clarissa's glass slipped and shattered. "There must be a mistake," she whispered. "She bakes." James chuckled. "And runs the company that now owns your department." Our mother went pale. I turned to Clarissa, voice quiet but clear. "You mocked me for years. Dismissed me like I didn't belong. You never asked what I was building. You just assumed it didn't matter." Ryan stepped forward, stunned. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at him. "Because I needed to know if you'd respect me without the title. Turns out you didn't." James cleared his throat. "Shall we make it official?" I nodded. "Gladly." I turned to Clarissa. "I believe you had a speech prepared. Still want to give it?" She fled the room. I picked up a champagne glass, tapped it gently, and said, "If I may have your attention." After the announcement, the room didn't just quiet, it collapsed inward. Whispers rose like static. I could feel eyes on me, not with pity anymore, but with unease. No one knew where to look. Clarissa had vanished down the hall, her heels clacking like thunder against the marble. Our mother chased after her, too stunned to say a word. My father stood by the bar, frozen, drink in hand. James Vance gave me a firm handshake and leaned in. "That," he said with a faint grin, "was the most graceful hostile takeover I've ever witnessed." I gave a soft chuckle. "Not hostile, just overdue." He nodded. "And poetic." As guests murmured and awkwardly resumed sipping their drinks, Ryan approached. His face was pale, his movements hesitant. "Rosalie, you really built all of this?" "I did," I said plainly. "Why didn't you tell me?" I studied his face, searching for any trace of the man I thought I knew. I wanted to, but every time you stood silent while your family belittled me, I realized something. If you didn't defend me as a baker, you never deserved me as a CEO. His throat tightened. But I love you. Then you should have respected me. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. Love without respect is theater, and I'm done performing. I turned away just as Clarissa re-entered the room, her makeup repaired, but her eyes wild. You humiliated me, she snapped in a hushed tone, in front of my clients, my mentors, my team. No, I said calmly, you humiliated yourself. I just stopped covering for you. She folded her arms. Fine, I'll resign. I refuse to work under you. That's your choice, but before you go, know this. Every major firm in Miami already knows what happened tonight. The way you spoke about me, about people like me, that won't disappear. Clarissa hesitated. The bravado began to crumble. What do you want from me? I want you to learn. She looked confused. Starting Monday, I continued, you'll be working with our Community Impact Division. We're launching a program to support local restaurants and minority-owned businesses. You'll be helping them restructure finances. And who, she asked bitterly, will I be reporting to? I smiled. Our project lead, my mother. She still runs the bakery, by choice, not because she failed at something else. Clarissa's mouth fell open, but before she could answer, our mother stepped forward. Rosalie, maybe we could talk about this privately, she said, her voice uneven. We're family. I turned slowly. Family? For years, you cropped me out of photos, made me sit with the help, and whispered like I wasn't even there. At what point did I stop being family? My mother's eyes welled up. We didn't know you had money. That's the problem, I said quietly. You thought my worth came from money. And then, for the first time in my life, my father spoke up. She's right, he said. The entire room turned. Rosalie has every reason to turn away from us. I sat by and let this happen. We lost sight of what mattered. It was the most I'd ever heard him say in one breath. He stepped toward me. We failed you. I nodded, not out of triumph, but clarity. I know. Then I turned to Clarissa. Be at the bakery Monday morning. Mom doesn't tolerate lateness. By the time the guests had filtered out, the Whitmore estate felt less like a triumph and more like a museum after closing. Pretty, but hollow. I didn't wait for anyone's goodbye. I simply left. Outside, the night air was thick with the scent of salt and citrus. My phone buzzed as I got into my car. Dad, come by the bakery. Your mom saved you a plate. I didn't hesitate. On my way. 20 minutes later, I stepped through the back door of our family bakery. The lights were low, but the smell of cinnamon and dough still lingered like a promise. My mother stood at the counter, still in her gala heels, a faded apron tied around her waist. You're early, she said gently. Old habits. I grabbed a cloth and wiped down the front counter, like I'd done 100 times before. My father came in from the back with empanadas. We sat, we ate, and for the first time in a long while, it was quiet. Not the kind of silence that hides pain, but the kind that heals. You still come back here? My mom asked, surprised. Always, I replied. It reminds me who I am. She studied me. I misjudged you. No, I said softly. You just believed what was easiest to see. She nodded, eyes heavy. You're not angry? I was, I admitted. But anger is exhausting. I'd rather build. We talked about Clarissa, about the bakery, about what would happen Monday when she reported for her new job under our mother's supervision. She'll learn, Mom said. Or she won't, I replied. But either way, she'll face herself. Before I left, I stood behind the counter once more, tracing the old register with my fingers. People had called me weak for being quiet, invisible for being kind. But silence isn't weakness. It's knowing when to speak so no one forgets what you said. I never wanted revenge, just clarity. And tonight, I got it. If you've ever been underestimated or pushed to the side, keep building, keep showing up. Let them talk. Let them doubt. Because one day, when the noise fades, all that's left standing will be the truth. And you